Hey folks, Aaron here with the Kunkel Homestead. I'm filming this in early 2023, and over the course of the last year or so, eggs have gotten expensive. Over the last 3 years, I've seen them go from 60 cents to almost $5 a dozen just here locally. I'm suspecting a lot of people are going to be thinking about getting into chickens this spring. So if that's you, I've got some pros and cons to think about when you are wanting to get into chickens for the first time. Let's start with the pros. First thing, chickens are fun. At least I think they are. I love just watching them scritch around in the grass, chase each other, chase after me for snacks, listening to them crow all day long. That's not just a morning thing. I find it very pleasing and very rewarding. Pro number two, if you have kids, chickens are a great way to help teach them responsibility. Now, Amanda and I, we don't have any kids ourselves, but we do have friends with kids. We have a couple nephews, and they love coming over and feeding the chickens, running around and finding all the spots where there might be eggs hidden, gathering those up for us. They have a blast with it, and it teaches them something about responsibility and where their food comes from. And that actually leads me into pro number three. You know where your food comes from. Your eggs are coming from your chickens. You know how old they are, you know how they've been stored, everything. You have complete control over that scenario. The next pro that I have for keeping your own chickens is they're great pest control. Like I said, they like to scritch around in the yard all the time. They're eating bugs. We have had a drastic drop in the number of insects that we've had around our property. We don't have issues with aphids on our tomato plants or hornworms. No, chickens eat them. Chickens actually will eat about everything. They actually cut down on our food waste quite a bit too, which is a kind of another pro along with the food. Yucky bread crusts? Give them to the chickens. We can give them vegetable scraps, leftover just that we've had for dinner, pastas, breads, meats. Have a extra, turkey after Thanksgiving, or chicken. They'll eat that too. They'll eat everything. So your food waste actually will go down drastically once you have chickens. And the last pro that I have is going to be, of course, the eggs themselves. Now, a lot of people might be getting into chickens and you're going to think, oh, free eggs.
It's false. No way. Not this time.
No, no, they're not free. We actually did another video where we totaled up our cost of getting started with chickens, and it was the better part of $2,000. So that actually will start me out on my cons. The startup cost of getting chickens. And it's gonna vary depending on how many chickens you have, if you're wanting them to free range or versus keeping them in a coop all the time, if you can DIY or if you have to buy everything. Your space, there's gonna be a lot to take into account there, but you are gonna have some things that you're gonna need to get started, and we have a whole series of videos about our chicken coop setup. The next con that I have, in addition to the original setup cost, you do have a maintenance cost. Again, depending on how many birds you have and if they free range or not, you're gonna have to feed them. Feed costs money unless you're growing it all yourself in your garden, but they're gonna need scratch grains, they're going to need layer pellets, they're going to need sunflower seeds for protein or just your kitchen scraps. Sometimes we fix some stuff just for them. So that is gonna be a cost. You'll also have to maintain your equipment. If you get a hole in your fencing, you've got to patch that or replace that. If your watering system goes down on you, you have to repair that. We talked about responsibility earlier as far as kids helping out. Chickens are a responsibility. We can't just up and go on a vacation. We have to plan that. We have to make sure that we have somebody who's either staying at our house and house sitting for us, or who's gonna come over once, twice a day, let the chickens out in the morning, put them back in the evening, and gather the eggs. Throw them some feed, make sure that their waterer is full. We can't just go on vacation. We have a responsibility to our animals. So that is a bit of a constraint. So the next con that I have, I talked earlier about the roosters crowing. I love it. Some people hate it. Depending on where you live, I have 3 acres and my neighbors don't mind the roosters. If you live right in town and this is in a small fenced-in backyard and you have neighbors a stone throw away from your house, you might not want roosters. The hens themselves tend to be a lot quieter though, so you might get away with it. But going along with that noise is, well, mess. They poop. They poop wherever they are. They don't care. They'll poop on it. Everything's going to be a mess. So just be aware of that. The more space you have, the more spread out that's going to be, the less you're going to notice it. The less birds you have, the less you're going to notice it. And of course, if they're free ranging versus contained, then that's going to make a big difference on what that looks like for you as well. But it is something to take into account. You will have to clean up after them. The next con that I have going along with the mess is they're going to wreck your yard if they are free ranged. We used to have nice things, and then we got chickens. We have a planter on our carport that they decimate. They use it to dust bath in. They kill almost anything we try to plant there. They'll scritch up random holes in the yard. We have mud puddles now where we used to have grass. They've killed our landscaping flowers in most places. Be aware of that. That is something you're going to have to deal with, and there's not much chicken proofing stuff. You either have to keep the chickens in an area, or you have to cover everything in fencing, and by then you can't even see your flowers anyway. So that is something that you do need to take into account if you're planning on getting chickens. And the last con that I have for raising chickens is, just like with any sort of livestock, you're going to have to worry about predators. You're going to have to worry about illnesses, and you're going to have to worry about other inherent risks of having animals. In the 3 years that we have had chickens, we have had 3 killed by predators. 1 was killed by a hawk and 2 were killed by a fox. We had 2 others that were attacked by hawks and survived. So it's a thing. And again, that's something to take into account on whether you're going to have your chickens out or free range. And again, we'll discuss that in more detail in another video. Illnesses. Any animal can get sick. We had to put down one of our chickens because she got a respiratory infection and we couldn't have that spreading to the rest of our birds. And we didn't really have a great way to treat that. We have things such as sour crop. We had a chicken with that. We had a whole video on how we helped her, and then she got eaten by a fox. Bumblefoot is one we haven't dealt with personally, but it is a thing that happens. You can have an egg get stuck. It's called being egg bound, and you have to get the egg out of them without harming the chicken, and sometimes that can be fatal. It can be fatal if you don't get the egg out. They will die. All kinds of things can happen to your birds as far as illnesses, ailments, and things like that, and you will have to take care of that one way or another. And then there's just other inherent risks of having a livestock. Our chicken's free range, for example, and it's never happened in 3 years, but I'm always worried that one's going to walk up to the road and get ran over. Hasn't happened, knock on wood, but it's a risk. So things like that, you got to take into account as well. There you have it. There is my list of pros and cons of getting chickens in 2023 or anytime really, but just some things to take into account, and you can tell the way that we've picked, we've decided it's worth it. If you found this video helpful, entertaining, you want to see more of my content, please give it a like, give us a subscribe, and we'll see you next time.